Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have.
We're going to talk about are the three law enforcement officers that were charged and convicted of federal crimes of violating George Floyd's civil rights, not rendering aid. We're going to talk about what they could potentially be sentenced with and how that is also unprecedented, as it is the first time ever, I believe, that officers have been charged federally with this crime and convicted by a jury. The three officers, Lane, Kueng, Tou, tried in federal court for the deprivation of civil rights, or not allowing George Floyd his civil rights, or providing life-saving measures on him like CPR. So we're going to talk about that case now. If you have questions about it, get in the comments and let me know. So I talked about this a little bit already on a video, why I personally probably would have voted not guilty on 2 out of 3 for Tou, who was on crowd control, and Lane. And then I would have voted guilty on Kueng. I think it's really hard to not find Kueng guilty. For sure, I would have voted guilty on Derek Chauvin in his cases. And I think somebody absolutely had to pay for what happened, how they acted, how long it was, how much they didn't care about what was happening to George Floyd, how they could have done a million different things. But I really am struggling with the Lane, the guilty verdict on Lane. Rookie cop who said, should we turn him over? Who looked to see if his chest was moving up and down to see if he was breathing, looked to see the blood flow in his veins. And as soon as George Floyd was turned over, when he saw his face on the stretcher and knew that it was bad, jumped in, tried to do CPR, was helping, doing chest compressions with EMS. To me, this burden now on officers, if they do everything Lane did, basically they have to tackle their supervising officer, Derek Chauvin, put him in handcuffs, and haul him away while they have this crowd surrounding them. George Floyd, dealing with arresting George Floyd, whether or not you think he was resisting, he definitely wasn't just, sitting in the squad car, making it easy on them. So there was a situation they had to deal with. So really all Lane could have done was shove Derek Chauvin off physically and taken over, and then potentially had a fight with Derek Chauvin right there in the middle of the street. I think doing nothing is wrong. And I think, getting on top of him like Kueng did as well is wrong. And I understand why he's convicted. But man, I struggle with the Officer Lane conviction. So what I want in the chat now is guilty or not guilty for Lane specifically. Because that's the one I struggle with the most. And this is the, for everybody saying, oh, guilty, 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 easy, guilty. This makes total sense. This crime charge makes sense for what they did. It is very unusual to see the federal government charge something like this. I think I read, and I've looked into it, I think this is the first time ever they have tried and convicted law enforcement officers under this statute. And that should tell you something. Now, there's a first for everything. I get it. But this is very, very uncommon. I see some votes for half guilty from Star. That means not guilty, because the federal government has a burden of beyond reasonable doubt. So he's only half guilty. He's not guilty, legally speaking. So somebody asked in the chat, what kind of sentence are they looking at? Let's share this screen here. Deprivation of rights under color of law. This section makes it a crime for a person acting under color of law of any state, of any law, to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. Very, very, very vague. Very vague. Sorry, I just noticed I still had that comment up. So, for the purpose of Section 242, acts under color of law include acts not only done by federal, state, or local officials within their lawful authority, but also acts done beyond the bounds of that official's lawful authority. If the acts are done while the official is purporting to or pretending to act in the performance of his or her official duties. Persons acting under color of law within the meaning of this statute include police officers, prison guards, and other law enforcement officers, as well as judges, care providers in the public health facilities, and others who are acting as public officials. It is not necessarily that the crime be motivated by animus towards the race, color, religion, sex, handicap, family status, or national origin of the victim. And you can kind of catch there at the end that this usually is violating somebody's protected class. That's the constitutional protection usually they're talking about. And here is the potential punishment. The offense is punishable by a range of imprisonment up to a life term or the death penalty, depending upon the circumstances of the crime and the resulting injury, if any. So, maximum potential penalties for these officers for this conviction. That's what they're looking at. Yes, I see that the other two officers, I know the other two officers got more charges than Lane, but I mean, it doesn't matter. As you see, he gets convicted of that. He's looking at life in prison or death. So, I mean, I don't think those additional charges really matter that much to me. So, mostly not guilty for Lane. There is a couple guilty votes in here, but mostly not guilty. Don't know enough details about Lane. I gave as many as I could give here based on what came out in the trial. Lane was the only one that helped try to get him help. Correct. All three guilty. I watched that video. Yep. Lane facing the maximum penalty. Yes, Zor, there are guidelines, and potentially we can go through and talk about what those are, but he's still, I mean, no cap is the point. There's no cap on what they're looking at. Let me scroll up here, see if we have any questions about this trial. Oh, a lot of people were asking, why did the federal case happen before the state case? I don't know, just timing sometimes when you get a trial date, when it happens. Chauvin's state case happened first, then the federal case, and this one, the federal case happened first, then the state case. They are being charged with accessory to murder in the state case. Now that they're convicted, potentially we could see some plea deals go down in the state case. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way, though, especially for Lane. If I was him, I would take it to trial. Yeah, Candy also asked that. Diana found being on a jury fascinating. I would do it again in a heartbeat. Most people that are on it actually enjoy the experience and have positive feedback about it. So Space Cube, why couldn't he have discreetly told him to get off? He discreetly told him asked, should we roll him on his side? I mean, obviously this jury felt like he should have done more. And then some people in the chat agree. What does that look like? Just continuously ask? I agree. I think he could have continuously said, you need to let him up. You need to let him up. You need to pull him on his side. You need to let him up. Are you sure he's breathing? He could have done more. I agree. I just don't know if it rose to the level of this criminal behavior. Yeah, Cordoba said there's a case in Florida where a police officer grabs a sergeant to get him off a suspect, so not an impossible thing. I agree. But is that the standard? Is that going to be the standard now for officers? Michelle, that's mostly the case. I mean, that's mostly the case. Yes, Beverly, he can appeal. Does Lane have recourse? Can he appeal? Why aren't these three in custody? They're under the same bond conditions before, so the court didn't feel like they were a risk to the community, a flight risk. So it's just kind of the same bond conditions. Zor saying the same thing about good experience on a jury and it felt good to do his part. I agree. So Dash, Kueng also a rookie. I agree. But you think he's guilty because he didn't say, should we roll him over? I don't think he tried to do really anything to try to protect George Floyd's civil rights, which is what the case was. And he was also on top holding him down. And I think there's a theory that but for him also helping Derek Chauvin hold him down, maybe George Floyd wouldn't have died. So I think Kueng is a little bit more responsible because of his physical actions and what he didn't do in the case. Feel free to disagree. People like to make fun of guests I have on the show, which is, not cool and not interested. I don't care. And you can keep it moving. They like to make fun of my beard or something like that, or the way that I look or my hair. I think it's funny. That doesn't bother me. People like to talk about how I miss parts of trials. They like to hate how I interrupt videos that get played. And I'm like, if you want to just watch the video with no interruptions, this is not the channel for that probably. But I say all that to say, disagreement is absolutely okay in the chat. We welcome it. We think it breeds discussion. I like diversity of thought and diversity of conversation. So feel free to disagree with me, is why I was saying all that. You're not going to like me. I feel like Lane will get off on the criminal charges because it's very different than the civil rights charges. I think she means the state charges versus the federal civil rights charges. And I think it's going to be harder to convict him under the state accessory to murder charges. I agree with you. Yeah, a lot of people saying they probably won't give him life. I agree. I don't think they'll get life, but the fact that they could is a little scary. Will you help Lane, Peter? I'll help anybody that calls me, but can't make any promises.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.